Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We'll bring this meeting of the January 28th, 2020 meeting of the Glasgow Electric Plant Board to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda and any additions. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion.
On a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Number two, we're going to consider the minutes of the December 17th, 2019 meeting. That was a while back, wasn't it? It's been about 6 weeks. If everybody's had an opportunity to review the minutes of the last meeting, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
And a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the December 17th, 2019 meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Third item on the agenda is consider Windstream bankruptcy matter. I think Scott's here tonight.
Right. Scott Beckert is right in the middle of the table there. Any of you who have not met him, he has agreed. He and his firm are representing us in the Windstream Chapter 11 matter. Right at a year ago, they filed, and we've been struggling. At the time when they filed, we had already billed them for our annual pole attachment fees, which are billed annually. And so that was pre-petition. And so Scott started off trying to figure out how we could collect that roughly $40,000. And since then, we have had, well, first of all, another year has elapsed and we billed them for another annual pole attachment fee, virtually the same amount. And it hasn't been paid either. So neither of those, one of them's within the bankruptcy court and one of them's outside. Should be post-petition, which one would think wouldn't be a problem, but neither of them have been paid, although Melanie got an email from them last week saying they're gonna pay. And so that's why I had Scott kind of on standby, hoping it would resolve itself, or a large amount of it would be resolved, but it has not yet. So I'm gonna ask Scott to catch you all up on what our prospects are there. And then the second issue is a little more local. Windstream has 4 accounts just for electricity with us at these addresses, and the big one is the telephone office at the top of Telephone Hill there. And over in the right-hand column here are the number of months they are past due. And normally, if we had an electric customer that was that amount of time past due, they'd be in the dark. We would have cut them off. However, I didn't want to have to tackle that by myself. I wanted you all in on that, because if we cut that building off, that's going to affect telephone service in our fair city once they run out of, if they run out of diesel fuel for their generator. Scott's going to talk about, I'll lob this to Scott too, so that he can advise us on what we should do. So
Catch
Scott,
that grenade, Scott.
Yeah, I was going to say.
take it away.
All right, well, thank you all. Also, in full disclosure, I practiced with Jeff's father for about 38 years, so knew him when he was a much younger man.
Tell us stories.
We won't hold that
Oh,
against you.
man, listen, I tell you stories. Yes. I got involved in this shortly after Windstream filed bankruptcy. Their bankruptcy's pending Southern District of New York. Looks like about every New York and Chicago law firm has been employed in this case. I've lost track of the number of pleadings that have been filed. Legal fees, I just looked at one of the applications today for Windstream between their counsel and the creditors committee appears to be running about $1 million a month. When we first started dealing with these pole agreements, since they are ongoing contracts, they had the right to initially either to agree to assume the contract and keep it in place or reject it. They had a couple times deadlines to assume or reject the agreements. We were never on the list. Finally, we're on a list of some small contracts. I think the rack leases, which were $3,000 or $4,000, they assumed those.
Windstream is also in our knock back there.
Yeah, but never did file any sort of motion in which we were identified for the pole agreement. I recognize when they file a motion to assume or reject contract, they're usually identifying 60 to 100 different contracts around the country or leases that they're either assuming or getting out of. So we had been debating, because we can't seem to get their attention or get the attention of the lawyers. Do we incur the cost of filing the motion, hiring co-counsel in New York, and actually have to go up there and jump up and down in the courtroom to get somebody to talk to us? It was in the midst of us kind of discussing that Melanie got the email that indicates they're going to pay. So maybe that issue is going to resolve itself on the poll agreements they're going to pay, whether they've included it on a list or not. I think all indication has always been that they wanted to keep that agreement in place because they've been adding new poles and connections, so.
But if they don't, are you prepared to just take a wild guess at, if we had to go to court and jump up and down, what the cost of doing that versus the 40 grand? I mean, would it cost more than it's worth?
No, it would not cost more than it would be worth, but it would require not only filing the motion, going to New York on a court date to appear, and probably the most expensive thing would be, since I'm not admitted to practice in New York, I would have to associate myself with a New York lawyer.
That's not yet employed.
And I just know that some New York lawyer who's going to think about this as a one-time offing, you're going to have to pay them probably at least $10,000 to walk to the courtroom with me. So, it's probably a $20,000 task. And I just hate to spend most of that. That's going to go to a New York lawyer or flights and stuff to go up there just to be heard and spend half of your money. So I've been loath to suggest we do that, but it may come to the time that we're going to have to do that.
Well, I wanted the board to hear that in case.
Yes, that's in addition to this.
So in addition to this, how much more in addition to this?
This is pretty minor. The big stuff is right at 40 grand a year for their rent to attach to our poles.
Right. And how long has that been, how much are they in arrears?
So now they're 2 years deep in it. There's
Okay.
one pre-petition around 40 and one post-petition.
Okay, so a little over $100,000 then, basically.
But that's addressed separately, is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
And that was my next question. How are they saying they can pay for it if they've already petitioned the bankruptcy court? That requires the approval of the trustee, correct?
Well, there is no trustee.
There is no
This is a
trustee.
reorganization, so
Okay.
they're the debtor in possession, so
Gotcha.
they get to reorganize their affairs.
Okay.
So they would
So they can do
petition to either keep this in place, if they decided now they wanted to reject that contract, they would still have to pay you the post-petition as administrative expense. So the last year's services, they would have to pay as an administrative expense, and then the pre-petition would be dealt within the plan.
So when you say an administrative expense, and I'm trying to remember my bankruptcy law, but when basically you pay to the court one big lump sum, and then the court kind of segregates that out to whoever
Well,
has those
except for
claims.
this, there would
correct?
not be a payment to the court. They would, either through a liquidating trustee or in their plan,
A
they would
trustee,
pay
okay.
that. Yeah, they would
Gotcha.
pay it themselves, since
Okay.
there's not a court-appointed person to handle the money. But the administrative expense, we would be at the top of the food chain
Okay.
with the lawyers and the accountants. That's where you want to be.
Right.
It's in that group.
So we're not considered unsecured, tertiary creditor then?
You would be if they reject the contract for the bill that was due prior to the date of the bankruptcy.
Okay.
So, but the bill that's come due post-bankruptcy will be at the top of the list,
Okay.
assuming they reject it. Now, this was all kind of came up the last couple of weeks, realized that this is a problem. I don't know why they're not paying this. They've paid these accounts for, I guess that would be 5-6 months post-bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And then have now just stopped. We're, I guess, to the point that we're gonna have to make the decision, do we disconnect the service?
It's been my experience in dealing with this kind of thing is we send them a letter and say, as of now, if you aren't paying daily, we're shutting service off. When you pay, we will turn it back on, but it's gone. We provide that service. In general, you get paid.
Yeah, I would say generally that is the case. Now, in this one, you know,
I mean,
To
we're
where-
providing a service, we have a
Sure.
right to shut it off if they're not paying.
yeah, sure. Except we're in a bankruptcy.
I know,
So,
but they won't pay.
yeah.
The bankruptcy doesn't have to pay. They can find ways of shoveling you around forever. But when you say pay or we shut it off and you intend to do it, then you will find there's some money wired in that day.
I agree with that. Even if it's the more nominal or the more minimal amount right here,
Mm-hmm.
if you shut it off and a lot of their customers are calling and raising Cain with them, it's gonna get some attention
Yes.
Well, if they have generators, they can stay on for a
for a
while.
while.
But
There's also a problem with sending a letter to them. We don't know where a human is.
Yeah. I mean, that frankly has been the biggest problem here.
you
Is
don't know who
we've
to
got,
talk to.
well, these accounts, I think there's 3 different addresses, Tulsa someplace, and of course, then there's the lawyers in New York and Chicago who, you know, $24,000 in the scheme of what they're dealing with is small
It's
enough.
peanuts.
that
They
it
just have
is.
to get their attention.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So
When you
that's
turn
what-
the power off down here, somebody's attention somewhere is going to
Yeah.
be.
Exactly.
I just don't want us to do it and turn off the power in such a way then that the bankruptcy court will continue contempt of the bankruptcy proceedings and we get sanctioned in some way. So
We'd
with
also
this,
like
the thing
not
that
to
I've got to
endanger
go back and
911.
find in the pile of the pleadings is whether they had any sort of motion in the beginning on how they were going to secure post-petition utilities. Because that would have been something they should have filed in the first few weeks, is how were they going to deal with utility service on a go-forward basis? And there's probably some sort of blanket order that addresses everybody across the country that they're getting utility service from. You know, if they were just local mom and pop store, they would have been required to put up an additional deposit locally here. Obviously, a company of this size was not going to be required to go around to all of its utility providers and provide a new deposit. So there's
Well,
some
if that's what you're
order in
telling us, we
place.
certainly would like to get.
Yeah, if it's there, yeah, we're going to put in for that. But I want to clear that before we get to, we gave them 2 weeks from the letter last week to pay this. Send it to the address on the accounts. I FedEx packages to the 2 lawyers who are involved, hoping that if a FedEx package hits their desk, that will prompt them to pay attention to this and get it paid. Otherwise, I think if we don't get an attention, that's what I was asking here. I mean, which one of these can we start disconnecting on a rolling basis that would do the least amount of harm to customers, but still enough to get attention? But it sounds like maybe the larger one is the one they have the generator that they can,
Yeah.
nobody would lose service immediately, but they would know that you're taking
Is there
action.
a manager in this plant here?
Not that we're aware of, DT.
You mean, there's nobody in charge of this?
Well, I mean, what I said, we're just not aware of it. We don't know who it is. We don't have a cell phone for
Where
somebody.
does our bills go?
Well, they go everywhere. That's what Scott was saying. Some of them go, there seems to be no rhyme or reason to it. Even these 4 accounts don't all go to the same place.
So
Yeah.
Is
so what
911
you're-
serviced by Windstream?
Well, I mean,
Anybody that
if we
had,
kill that West Washington Street switch and they run out of diesel fuel,
Yeah.
911.
911's out.
You're not gonna get dial time. You're not gonna get anything.
Okay.
Well, it's time somebody switched over to SCRT. Particularly
Well, actually-
911.
South Central and those 2 switches are co-mingled in their operations. It wouldn't be that simple. If one goes down, it's highly likely the other one would falter as well. I mean, I'm not a telephone engineer, but I know it's not a simplex type system.
so the other 3 smaller ones,
don't even know
it's
what
not like we
those-
could, you're not saying we couldn't have a progressive
That was
shutdown to get
initially
their
my
attention.
thought, was kind of just do it on a rolling disconnect, see
Right,
which ones would do the least harm, disconnect those.
one every
Just-
3 days or something until we
Yeah,
got their
just start
attention.
moving there, but, yeah, if we disconnect the other one and 911 goes down at some point,
Yeah, that's.
And all
I wouldn't want
Yeah.
concerns with
I don't,
I
I don't
just-
think,
We need
I don't
to
think we
find
want
out.
that blowback.
No.
Yeah, no, that's not good.
Who's in
That's
charge to 911?
I don't know. I just was hearing that that was the 911 for the first time, so.
It's complex. I mean, Windstream probably also provides some lines to the base of cell phone towers. And if the switch was down, it would have an impact. I don't know what the total impact would be. It wouldn't be pretty, I don't think.
Turn it off for an hour and see what it is.
Well, that's fine. All we need is an order from you guys.
Start flicking the switch.
I have a feeling when you switch it off, you're gonna find out who's in
Well, what
charge.
does this button do?
Well, nothing's gonna happen.
Somebody will find
as
us.
long as their generator has a nice supply of diesel fuel. Now, what happens at 701 Columbia Avenue and Clark Street and Cumberland Street, I don't know. Maybe that would be the thing to do, kill those three first and see what happens and not kill the main switch. Yeah.
Well, you sent a letter, they had 2 weeks, addressing
Yeah, I
the
gave
2
them 2
weeks,
weeks.
and that would be up.
Set it to 21st, so first of next week.
Well, you need to send something that tells them you're gonna shut the power off.
Yeah, no, that's, I have. That's what I did.
And if they don't pay by X, the power goes off. And, you know, I don't think we have any liability beyond that. I mean, there's some moral obligation if 911 goes down, but they should have some obligation to that too.
Yeah. So I would recommend that as to this, let me clear and make sure there's no order in place that's gonna tell us otherwise.
Like that
But-
preliminary order you were talking about.
Yes. So I
But
would
even
make,
if it is, they violated it.
I would think so.
Yeah.
But I just wanna see if it's there and what it says, if it instructs us otherwise. Assuming there's nothing in there, then I think when we get to that 2-week time period, we start disconnecting some of the minor services. Let's see if we get somebody's attention. We'll do whatever we can to get some human somewhere to respond and talk to us. And then,
I think we ought to formally make
I would like to get the
NCRTC
minutes.
aware of what's going on, so that anything that can be done on the
Yeah.
911 switch.
Yeah.
I think that's the first
Yeah, I
order
think
tomorrow,
that you should
Yeah.
do that.
so that they can at least pick up what they can.
Yeah, let them suggest what the failure of Windstream switch would do to the.
Yeah, maybe they'll.
Yeah. Well, okay, are you all, if you're not gonna make a motion, is the board comfortable with the minutes reflecting that you're okay with Scott's suggestion that when he says they didn't respond, that we proceed with termination after we've given notice to everybody we can think of to give notice to?
I think that's what you have to do. I mean, look what the total, somebody's paying that and it's not them.
Yeah, it's everybody else in town.
Yep.
While they're still collecting on their bills that are going out all over
One
town.
would say.
Mhm.
Okay.
Do we need a scroll on some of our information channels to let people at least a couple, 3 days before this, so that,
Yeah, switch over.
I'll
to-
defer to
It's not-
Ronnie, but if we kind of try to own that, I'm afraid we'll wind up owning it, some of it. I mean,
Well, yeah, there's gonna be lots of, collateral damage, and you don't wanna start then necessarily acknowledging all that you're getting ready to not cause, but be a part of.
yeah.
Well, outside of the bankruptcy motion, you know, really, we have to treat them just like we do any other customer, and we wouldn't let them get by 3 or 4 months without paying a bill without having
No,
a
I mean,
disconnection.
if they've been,
No.
Yeah,
anybody
no,
else.
it's the only thing we don't want to run afoul of,
yeah,
of
it's
course.
the
is
bankruptcy thing that
Yeah.
just would cause me to hesitate
Right.
in saying,
How long would they give you?
No, no.
Yeah,
In
the thing you gotta worry
Not
about.
very
when
much.
the
Scott's-
past, it has not been 3 months.
that's not the issue. We all understand the issues. The
Yeah.
phone
Right.
service to,
What
Yeah.
Scott's saying is you gotta worry about, you don't want the bankruptcy court to interpret it as an attempt to collect that,
Yes,
debt.
yeah, it's the
While they're in
collection of the
bankruptcy
back, it's
court.
not the collection of the ongoing. The ongoing is you're allowed to collect for that. If you try to extort the money out of the earlier, you're making a real cross. But getting money for ongoing, they're almost obliged to pay that in order to keep the services coming.
Yeah, nobody says you have to continue to provide service once somebody files bankruptcy. You can quit the service, you just can't collect the debt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would disagree.
No.
There is a provision in the bankruptcy code as to a utility that you cannot terminate the service, assuming they had provided the adequate assurances
Oh, okay.
of performance. That's what I don't know is what's in the bankruptcy record that provides those assurances. If they have done something to provide that, that may require us to file the motion with the bankruptcy court to terminate.
In the absence of the assurances, though.
In the absence of the assurances, then it's
We're
fair game.
Okay, okay.
So
that's why we
the-
need to just wait for you to
Yeah,
let us
I
know.
want to figure that one out. If there's something there, then I will communicate that we need to take a preliminary step. If not, then we'll go with the recommendation that at the end of their 2 weeks, we start the rolling disconnect.
Okay.
Okay.
So we don't need a motion, we're just gonna let Scott do his thing.
Well, we're gonna put in the minutes that the report was in your, unless you all object, we're just gonna put in there that you all acknowledged his report and told us to follow his lead.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and we could say that if there is no financial cost to us at shutting it down, such as bankruptcy court sanctions, that we should start rolling shutdowns, and I think that's the way to do it, and we may as well shut it down for short periods of time, and then they get longer.
But Scott wants to check into
Yeah, well, the first issue is whether or not that's a violation.
Yeah.
Once that's done, I don't see any reason we shouldn't just go ahead and start that.
Okay.
We don't have to provide services to somebody who's not paying us.
All right.
Scott, I
All right.
think, wants to get out of here and get on the road to.
Thank you.
Anything else elsewhere? All right, appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank
very
Thank
much.
you, Scott.
I'll let you know when I find out the next day or two.
We're anxiously awaiting.
Yeah.
Whenever, will you go ahead and just distribute that to the members if you find out what's, just so we
Oh,
can
sure,
kind of keep
yeah.
track of what's going on?
So, yeah, I may not be able to call you.
Well,
I'll set up a smoke signal.
well, if we have to do a special call session or something to take some action on it, if it's time of the essence, we can. At least we'll know what's going on.
Okay, well, that brings us back, oh, are you ready to go to the next item?
Yeah, moving on.
Okay.
Number 4.
The next item is this recurring issue that I have, we've had on the agenda a few times, about what to do with the 3.1% credit that we're getting now from TVA. First thing I can report is that you all tasked me with talking to TVA and see what they would allow us to contribute to community relief. I've done that, and they gave me a response that was included in your board packet. $4,500 a month is what they presently would consider a de minimis amount that they would not have a regulatory problem with us contributing. We also did some due diligence on community relief. Sent you all that information. They have an annual audit, and they have a lot of high-quality board members, so it looks like a legitimate operation that I wouldn't feel bad about us helping fund. So that's one option that you have. The second thing that needs to be considered, because what we're talking about is paying this out of the roughly $40,000+ per month credit that we're getting from TVA. And we have had an announcement on LSC. And I've had a lot of people ask me, well, what's the impact on us? Well, it's really unknown. It's not knowable yet because because of the non-volumetric rates and the product that they're buying from TVA, this 5-minute interruptible product, we're really presently just getting paid to wheel TVA power to them, and we get about $25,000 a month for that. So will the impact be $25,000? I wouldn't think so. I do not envision LSC calling up and wanting the power disconnected to that building. They've got a monstrous building that will require HVAC to keep the thing structurally sound, maintain humidity control and all that stuff. So before we know what the impact is, they're gonna be forced to make a decision about what they want to contract for. Do they want to go down from something like 10 megawatts down to 1 megawatt just to run their HVAC? And we have experience with this. Dana Corporation is the most recent one that announced they were leaving town, but that we continued to serve them for 18 months plus at the same rate that they were paying before, because they continued to do something in there. They had employees and they did some kind of production work. I shouldn't say production work. I don't know what they did, but they were in there and they maintained their contract. So it's unknowable to say what the impact is going to be. But the worst it could be is $25,000 a month. If they did do the thing that I can't imagine and say, we just want the service disconnected to this 23 acres under roof, I think is what it is. So, but that needs to be considered before you spend all of the $40,000 if, you know, if we want to insulate our customers from whatever the impact is, you might want to burn some of it from that new credit we're getting. And then finally, I'm not ready to go into the details of this because you all haven't directed me to do so, but the new contract with TVA has a really pearl of an opportunity for us to provide some of our own generation. And, you know, I'm really interested in some kind of a big PV solar array to go somewhere in our service area and for us to start learning how to operate that, how to get it through our billing, where that if people wanted to buy equity in it to enjoy the benefits of solar without having to put it on their roof. That's called community solar. And whatever we wind up doing with respect to that, there will be debt service involved. You know, it's not going to be free. So that's another thing I would like to think about spending some of that $43,000 a month credit on. So I wanted you all to have the whole list there before you start spending it. So I'll stop and let you all.
So the de minimis, the $4,500 a month community relief, that's in addition to any other type of, even this uplift program, et cetera, that's all combined. So we want to make sure that we have an understanding of that. I mean, from what I understand.
The question I asked was, what is the maximum de minimis amount that you know that the Glasgow Electric Plant Board could contribute to a charitable cause like community relief?
Okay.
And they came back and said around 50 grand or $4,500 a month.
And then do our regulators have an issue with us reserving funds for a future benefit or a future project, something like you were talking about here with the, you know, the flexibility?
Not at our present level of cash. If we had more cash on hand, they would have a problem with it, but we don't have much cash.
Okay, so we could set some aside if we wanted to pursue those,
Sure.
if those ever materialized in the
I
contract.
don't want to speak for our regulators, but I believe that to be true.
Okay.
Guys, I just don't see spending this money. We're, essentially, this 3.1% is a reduction in rates. And deciding that this should be contributed to charity or other causes, the people in Glasgow deserve this to be passed right through. It's their money they're paying, it's just a little less. We're spending their money that we don't have a right to spend. We're a power company that delivers power for the least amount of cost. We can't, to me, going out and offering charity and community relief is something for somebody else. We're spending their money. We have a need for humanitarian purposes to help people in trouble that can't get power. But to just pass money out or use it for other purposes, this is a reduction in rates. It should be passed along. Our power users are stretched to the limits, and they are paying all they can. And I don't see
just throwing this money somewhere else when they're the ones more likely to need it. They own this plant, and they're the ones who should be getting the benefits.
Well, we can do that. I've already shown you a rate solution that passed the whole 3.1% along to the customers, and it was rejected. But I can go right back again and show it to you again. If that's what.
My view, it should be just passed on through for the time being.
And, well,
Well,
I'm
that's
gonna-
really not any different though. I mean,
Well, I mean, last month you didn't want any of it, you wanted all of it put into an
I would
escrow
like it, I
account.
would prefer it put into escrow because I believe there's a possibility of getting out of the 20-year contract. But for the time being, I don't see giving it away. I think passing it through to the rate users is the best use of it if we're not going to put it into escrow.
well, that's essentially the other option that we were, the rate after the 3.1% reduction that we were presented when we approved the new rates.
Yeah, I mean, 3 months ago, I had slides showing you what the rates would be if we passed the whole thing along, and it wasn't popular at that time. But we can do that math again.
Personally, I would like to see a portion of that go to community relief. Because, you know, I mean, we talk about the people in the community who are struggling to pay their bills, and, you know, sometimes people need help. So that it would be there for them, and especially when we talked about designating it for a utility, for electric bills. I would also like to see some of that put to the solar pursuit. Because, I mean, if we can come up with some type of solar thing, then that 3 to 5% that we can generate can be thrown back into the grid to help offset peak and occurrence. Am I correct when I say that, Billy?
Yes, Libby, that's correct. Of course, it's not going to just manifest itself as a benefit.
No,
You know,
I'm
the
just saying,
cost-
but it
the
can-
cost of
It's
it
not
is-
free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, well, after the capital is spent, it's virtually free, but you got to repay the capital.
Isn't that gonna require some kind of battery along with the solar to really get the
It'd be a lot
full
more
benefit?
attractive, a
to-
lot more
to-
expensive too, but it's.
But it would,
I think it'd be
it
surprised.
would leverage what we could do with this, it would make that
Yeah.
whatever we produce via solar, it would make it so much more valuable to then use it when we needed it.
Whenever we want it.
And that could really be,
That would
To the
That's
also.
a
benefit
major,
of-
that could be a major impact. Yeah.
Well, what I'm
That's
saying is
10%,
that could
10 to
really
15% of
help.
our load.
those that are highly coincident,
Yeah.
those households are highly, if we could structure that somehow, now I may be overstepping what TVA will let us do.
Well, I mean, it's a really, the battery, the solar plus battery allows us to get into the world of microgrids. And all of you that read the book I assigned you to read, know that microgrids are a euphemism for a more of a standalone grid that could survive and serve some load, even if we lost our connection to TVA due to some weather event or other disaster. And that's what the hot thing is in the utility business, is how can we get away from the big central station power business that we've done for the last 50 years and back into more of a microgrid concept where you got generation locally. And we might be able to still operate whatever, our hospital in our downtown business district or something, even if you had no other resources. So yeah, that's one of the main reasons you'd want to have battery with PB.
The taxpayers of Glasgow are already contributing $88,000 to the community relief fund. So,
But you know, Marlon, it's not enough. I mean, they're out of
would
money.
never be enough, I'd say.
They're out of money by,
And
so
the
many days
county
into it.
contributes also.
But what we've heard now, ever since this infeltricity rate has been put into place, privately, publicly, social media, phone calls, in these meetings, is about how bad people are hurting when they can't afford their bills. And if we spread all of that across, 8,000 meters, it's gonna have a very minimal effect, not even noticeable really to most people. But if we can truly help those that really need the help in the cold winter months or when it's really hot outside, you got children, you got old, you have, elderly people that are really suffering and they really need the help, then I don't see, I think we would be remiss if we didn't at least consider those people? Because that's all we've heard now for years, is about how that particular group of people are really struggling, and it's not everybody in town. So I think, when we have an opportunity to be able to help people, and then that money comes right back into our pocket, and then at the same time, it really doesn't have any impact on rates, because if we wrote off all the bills that were never paid, we would have to eventually absorb those, and that becomes part of our rate design. So all we're doing is shuffling the money right back into our pocket, and there is no adjustment on rate design. But we have the ability now to really know our very minimal cost to ourselves, well below that $4,500 a month, to have a major positive impact on people in this community, the ones that truly need it. So to me, I think this is a no-brainer, the $4,500 a month to community relief. We can be very impactful.
But you think even from a business decision, the true cost isn't 4,500 because
Right.
Yeah.
those accounts that we're helping would be highly susceptible to have to be written off.
Listen, we're a nonprofit. We'd have to write it off. Guess what happens to rate design the next year?
Yeah.
Goes up. So who is really benefiting all this in a roundabout way? All of the ratepayers in Glasgow, because we're not going to have to raise that rate by that amount because of those write-offs. It all comes right back into our pocket.
And let's say if we spread that 3.1%, I know you've done the math, I just can't remember. If we spread that 3.1% across all the meter and pass it straight through, what would that be, say, per meter?
You gotta pick a rate class.
Residential.
We got two. Call it on residential, Melanie, tell me if I'm far off, but it was like $1.60.
Yeah, that's what I was
Something
gonna
like
think.
that.
So me personally, I would much rather see somebody who truly needs that help than me to save $1.60 a month.
Yeah. I'm
That's
the same-
my opinion.
I'm the same way. And really, you're not going to be saving the $1.60 because
Right.
if those accounts are written off, I mean, if we took all of it, let's say, but if all of those accounts are written off, we just have to raise rates
we'd have to
anyway.
raise rates the next year,
So
so
there
we
is
wouldn't be
no,
saving
there is
anything,
no
right.
net, there is not
So,
a
yeah.
net savings by the time it's all said and done. So,
We're giving everybody a 3.1% credit, discount is better than raising them 3.1, so.
well, we already had a reduction in our rate that we've already approved for this year. The current rate structure are less than they were in the previous year. So we're not seeing an increase in rates in the current year. So we're actually saw a reduction, which I don't think there's a better time to do this. We've got a reduction in our own rate structure for our customers, and at the same time, we've got a windfall of cash. We can decide what to do with it. And I think, look, we need to be good corporate citizens here at the same time and look at the people. And we've heard these complaints for years. We have an opportunity to do it. I say we do it. Let's do something about it. And let's remove some of this burden from the ratepayer, the ones that really need it. Like I said, it's going to be a net zero effect by the time you calculate in write-offs. So
Well, maybe not.
it allows us
It
to
mutes the effect.
be a very small, much smaller percentage.
It's
I'm sorry.
dampened.
This whole thing just complicates this money. If we need to, and we probably should, set up some kind of way of dealing with people who can't afford the electricity, such as a voucher generated by a community relief agency that knows when a person is desperate, and they can give them a voucher, they can come down here, and we can turn their power on. But that has nothing to do with the monies flowing. It's a matter of giving them so much in the way of power. It doesn't cost us anything, and it's certainly outside the realm of some kind of a relief and distribution of money. This is just a silly way of dispersing money.
But listen, community relief is not going to be able to afford to give us a voucher unless
I
they
didn't say
start.
community relief. There are agencies in town
Community
that
action.
know,
No.
that know what people need.
Mhm.
There are charitable agencies, there's religious agencies, and you can give them, allot them so much power, vouchers that they can give to a person or a home or a family, and they can come down here.
It's ripe
and get
for
relief.
abuse, though. It's ripe for abuse because but you don't have, You can't just hand out vouchers to churches and say,
Well,
here,
how are you
somebody.
gonna give it
If you
away?
think somebody needs it, well, Community Relief has their own vetting process.
Right.
They
Those
are trained in
there
it.
are-
Yeah, I think we don't want to get into
Yeah.
that.
Those
Exactly.
vouchers look like cash to us. I
Yeah,
mean, we credit
right.
that as the same thing as you gave us a.
Right, and as an auditor, that is just, I'm telling you, that's right for,
And if you've
people-
never dealt with community relief, they do amazing work. I mean, I have seen them help people keep electric on or get it back on when they've got a house full of kids. I have seen them give somebody money to help pay them rent to keep them from getting evicted. They do great work.
That they give to people that need it and determine, we're not in a position to decide who needs money. I mean, somebody comes to our door and says, we're poor, I've got to have money. You don't know whether they're lying or they do need it.
Yeah.
But the community
Exactly.
relief for other people. But instead of giving them money, you give them vouchers for so much power to turn power on and whatnot.
Well,
And
somebody's
that
gotta pay
doesn't
for that.
cost
That
anything.
would still have to
Somebody's
be
gotta
a
pay for it.
rate structure though.
They don't
I
get
mean,
paid
yeah,
for it.
so
We'll come
that's-
back to the rate structure, but it's a very small percentage of the issue. You won't even notice it.
But
Well,
by the
it's the
same
same
token,
thing.
it would be a very small.
same deal.
Reduction in your bill is $4,500 a month. I mean, spread that over 50.
We do have a need to treat
7,200
people,
meters.
a humanitarian need to treat people who are desperate. When their power's gonna be shut off and, they're gonna have kids, those kind of things need to be taken care of. But just pouring out some money is not the way to do it.
Well, I mean,
But that
that's
money's
what we
gonna
just,
come back right here
Yeah.
in the bills
Comes
that
back.
we're gonna have to write off at some point.
it all comes right back to
That
us.
effect won't be $4,500 a
No.
month for us.
No, nowhere near.
No.
If it's all taken out right here, if it's not sent to, grocery
It
stores.
goes to pay. I think that was part of the
That's part of
stipulation.
That's part of
it,
the
that it be
stipulation.
Yeah, it's
designated
only to
for
pay electric.
electric
And I think
bill.
Marlon said it wouldn't be for, cable or anything. It was
They're not
only
gonna give the
electric.
money to the individual. Community Relief's gonna.
Right, they
is
don't
gonna-
hand
is
money
gonna-
to a
Is gonna
person.
get that taken care of internally. They don't just hand them cash. and
Are
say,
you
"Go make
familiar with
electric."
community relief and how they work, DT?
I've been around them. I can
Okay,
say
so
that.
like I deal with them all the time. So basically, like if somebody comes to me and they're having problem paying their rent or getting a deposit or whatever to get into an apartment, we have a form that we have to fill out for community relief. They have to take it to community relief. When they take that, community relief has a list of stuff, they vet them. So then when they get through the vetting process, they send us a voucher. I can go ahead and use that just like cash, and then a week or two later, I've got a check in the mailbox for that voucher amount. I mean, it's a wonderful program. If you're not, I mean, if you've never really been involved with it or used it or helped somebody, I mean, it's a great program, and they are vetted. It's not like they just hand out money to somebody.
Listen, my wife deals with them. Libby, and I've talked about this
Mm-hmm.
before. She's, works up, she's the administrator up at First Christian Church, and calls every day come in,
Mm-hmm.
people needing, assistance. And the good thing about this is this allows us not only, because right now, food is more important than electricity. So if people are having to choose between eating and having their, heat or their air turned on, this relieves really both of those. So now this may free up some funds to be help people that truly are in need of missing a meal or two, or, several other things. I just think it's much more impactful for them to be able to say, here's our budget. We have effectively created an endowment for them, and they can count on from year after year this money of being able to come in here. And I think it's going to make this is a lot, $56,000 a year, or no, $54,000 a year.
It's coming out of the rates. I just don't like to take this decrease, the 3.1% that has been given back as a rate reduction and not using it for that. If we want to do the charitable, as you say, to the community relief, we issue vouchers or whatever we want to do to and take in so much of it. But I don't see using this way.
It's as long as it is short though.
Yeah.
It's the same,
Listen,
it's the same,
it's-
comes out of the same pot at the end of the day.
Right, if we just gave a voucher out and it came out of our general operating fund, then we would have to include that in our rate design. Sure. All right, the next year. This way, we don't have to include it in the rate design because, like I said before, a lion's share of that money is coming right back into here.
And they can budget.
Yeah, people
is
can
very
budget.
important.
I mean, it's
To
a
know
much
the-
cleaner way. Really, and also, moving beyond that, I would like to see about $10,000 a month put into a capital improvements fund, restricted for the flexibility payments. I'd like to see that kind of locked
This is a
in.
windfall of money that is all, it's just a reduction in what it costs for Glasgow. And the people who need it are the people right now that are paying bills they can't pay. And I know it's not a big number, but it is a lot of people involved.
This will have a much more, it would be much more impactful here than spreading it out across all of the residential meters at $1 whatever a month. I mean, I can only speak for myself and a few around this table, I think, but if somebody told me that I could assist someone in their electric bill and it cost me $1.60 a month, I think I'm all in. I already participate in the roundup, which, you know, it's costing me about 80 cents a month, so what's another $1.60 at that point? If I know that I can help somebody and truly be impactful to those that really need it, the ones that really need it. This way we know that we're giving to people that really need it. And, you know, it's not just, you know, spread it out across everybody, whether or not it's based on need or not. And then, you know, listen, if we've got another way that I think we can really benefit and help, you know, with what your concern is spreading that cost across, you know, those ratepayers, or that savings across the ratepayers, is this flexible provision, the flexibility provision that's offered in the TVA contract. Listen, we start producing electricity that represents 10 to 15% of our load, and we can throw it back in the grid in a time when our power is the most expensive. The sun doesn't cost anything. The capital does. But if we can plan for that and put ourselves in a position where we can cash flow that thing positive, then all of a sudden, guess what that does? That's an additional amount that could go back into rate design as a reduction in rate
But I
design.
think the key is to store what that 5% in a battery
Yeah.
and discharge it when it's worth the
Yes,
absolute most.
absolutely.
That's how we
Yeah.
really,
That's
that's how we get
I
the
mean,
most
you talk
bang for
about
the buck.
reducing
Yeah.
your 10 to 15% of your load, what impact that has on, you know, when we start sitting it out here in the most expensive times of the day, when TVA charges us the most, I mean,
Right.
you
Well,
can,
initially, remember,
you
we
can
were still
really
at
save.
5%.
Yeah, but we take the 5%, but we pull that 5% into a battery and shoot it when it's worth the
Exactly.
most, and we'll get a heck of a return on that investment.
Or you sell it to different people that want to reduce their bill, or if some people just want to have renewable resources. There's a lot of different market forces at work.
You know, we can make our first responders and some others, we can make them the primary beneficiaries of, you know, any type of backup power necessary that we may have. If there's a calamitous event that keeps them out of power, I mean, there's
Hospitals,
lots of
first
things,
responders.
hospitals, you know.
We're getting a
whatever.
little far afield. Unless there's a motion on the table, I think we should move on.
Well, I mean, we're just discussing the possibilities here, but.
Yeah.
So, I'll make a motion. I say we take $4,500 and give it to community relief, and I say we take $10,000 a month, put it into a special capital reserves fund for future expansion and future projects related to renewable energy. We can take the remainder of it and place it back into the general operating fund, and we can reissue another rate design based on the additional savings of, you know, whatever that may be.
Especially once you know what the
25,000.
LSC impact is.
Right.
Yeah, so that'll help dampen the cost of the LSC. Maybe there won't be any increase in rates across the board.
Either way, did you answer that question about the savings? You know, there was some question about whether someone would have to prove how much you were just putting into the, what, savings or capital accounts.
Yeah, the question
Tim would mess
was,
that up.
can we, could we just save it? And my answer was, at our present cash balance, we would be allowed to save it.
That just came up earlier. I wanted to be sure you didn't forget that.
Yeah.
I answered it, yeah.
Yeah.
So your motion has three parts to it. One is to fund
Community relief at $4,500, $10,000 to our capital reserves fund
to
for.
start this
Yeah,
flexibility
flexibility
project.
payment.
And then the balance to be used for a general rate reduction.
To help buffer the $25,000 a month potential loss that we may have through LSC. Yeah, which will be just reflected in our rate reduction across the board. Potential.
As long as, potential, as long as the,
So we all win. DT gets what he wants, and Libby gets what she wants, and everybody gets what they want here. So,
Libby gets two parts of what she
yeah,
wants. Yeah.
right. And it's not just what you want, I mean.
I know.
I'll second the motion.
Yes, very happily.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? Can I ask a
Most
question?
certainly.
I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You want to take the credit and set aside a fixed amount of 4,500 for community relief,
Yeah,
a fixed amount of 10,000 for the future possibility with solar, and then take the remaining,
just goes right back into operations.
okay?
And then we'll design a new rate structure, we have to get approved, but based
Well,
on
we're doing
this.
that annually.
Right.
We'll be doing that again in
And-
Let's
August.
design
part of
the
that
rate
will
structure,
depend
and
on
takes into
that.
consideration that additional, those additional funds.
I would
that are
like to
coming down.
stipulate that $4,500 is only to be used for electricity.
Yeah. I-
Yes,
I
That
agree
was,
with
that was
in
what
the
was in
original.
the
I agree with you,
original
DT.
last
Absolutely.
month.
I
Yeah.
wish you'd also put a term on there. You don't mean in perpetuity, do you?
I think that needs to be revisited yearly.
That's what I would like to do.
Yeah, I think it needs to be revisited yearly.
Because if
Because it may get to
Are
a
you
point
talking
that
about
they
to
don't.
community
we don't need
relief?
that. Yeah, because it may
Yeah.
get to a point that it's not that necessary, you know?
Okay.
I mean, you
I mean,
can't just
they
say
need to do
for,
budgeting. If we just say, look, the board decided we're gonna, for the next 12 months, we're gonna give you 4,500 a month,
Yeah.
and then we'll reevaluate it
yeah,
after that.
yeah.
I think that's good.
I think it needs to be
Well, then I'll amend my motion
reevaluated
to
yearly.
include language that stipulates, restricts those funds to electricity only,
Mm-hmm.
and we do it for a 12-month period. from-
Okay, no, so
from,
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm clear, because originally I was thinking you meant, so each month we're going to give that amount.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So that could be $15,000 one month, that could be 25,000 the next month. So what you're really wanting to do is look at it on an annual basis of what the difference
4,500.
was
We're gonna do
after-
4,500 for the next 12
For the
months.
next 12
Then we'll
months.
revisit come next January meeting.
10,000 a month to go
Or
in for the
December.
Right.
flexibility, so, and that's for 12 months.
Yes,
We'll
that's what
revisit
I
it
think,
next
so
year.
we're gonna see what the difference is from 12 months.
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't understand your question.
I think she's talking about, you're talking about the balance of the.
Well, you're saying, you know, we're getting a $40,000 credit from TVA. Well, it could be $30,000, it could be $50,000. So if you're telling us to give away 14,500 and the rest of it goes back to the ratepayers,
No,
we're
Rest
gonna
of
have
it
to do that
Rest of
on
it
goes to
some
the
sort
general
of.
fund.
the rest of it goes
basis.
into our regular income. our regular-
Deposit it into
But
the
then
checking
it's going
account.
into the rate,
At
Well,
some- at
it
some
will,
point.
it will be figured in the next
At
year's
some
rate
point,
design.
yes.
yes, which is the same.
Right, which is what DT was talking about.
Right.
Yeah. We'll
Okay.
just adjust the
So we'll look
rates
at it
based
an
on.
annual basis.
Yeah, based on, it'll just flow in there like any other type of revenue.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got an amended motion.
Got amended motion, 4,500 a month to community relief for 12 months.
Electric bill only.
Electric bill only, like 10,000 a month to capital reserves account to look at, potential future projects for electric, for energy generation.
PV or battery
And
storage
the
or
remainder,
combination.
the remainder goes into the general operating fund.
I'll second
We
that
understand.
again.
That's my motion, I need a second.
Second.
Second, got a third. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign.
No.
Motion passes. Okay, next item is consider official custodian of records resolution.
Yeah, I'm gonna lean on Ronnie here, but the background is that, for most of my career here, I never saw an open records request. But in the last few years, I've seen a lot of them. And, I mean, they had kind of evolved to a point, no, I shouldn't have said kind of evolved. They have evolved to a point where that they're often repetitive, and we've really been a bit loose on the way we would accept them, as you all know. Sometimes they come in by email, and we've been trying to comply with those, but the filing system is difficult to deal with when we accept an emailed open records request, and it goes to all of you all instead of the custodian of records. And then when we respond, sometimes at least one local requester would use the return email to make another open records request. And it was becoming very difficult to properly document in that fashion. So I sought help from council, and we've been really lucky with some really talented counsel that have been doing some pro bono work for us. And one of the first questions was, well, you are complying with KRS 61876. And I said, I'm not sure that we are. And so I talked to Ronnie about it, and here it is. And it's not complicated. It's just that the board is supposed to stipulate what the rules are, and we're supposed to post what you all decide in the lobby. And we need to provide some kind of a form and say that everybody that requests needs to use this form, and the requests need to go to me or whomever you designate as the custodian of record. You guys as individuals are not subject to open records requests, and you should not respond to them. So we're just trying to neaten this thing up. And Ronnie, I'll hand it over to you for whatever I've left out.
Yeah, you can see pursuant to the statute, you're supposed to, we should have adopted rules and regulations. I know they've been responding, as Billy Ray said, maybe not so much in the past, but recently, which has brought this, I think, to his attention and now to my attention. So you gotta have some rules and regulations. And they don't have to say very much. You can see A through D, it doesn't say a whole lot. And then number 2 is talking about the cost. I prepared a sample of a notice that really Kentucky Administrative Regulations had an example. They were going through these same requirements, and they had it's a little shorter than mine. I fleshed it out a little bit just about some of the issues.
And it's laid in front of you, and
Yeah.
I've got a copy of it I can link to if you want to watch it on the screen.
And mine was 2 pages if you got 2 pages, but, and I think, oh, it's on the back, okay. I
Yeah.
can see the back. There are some things, you'll see the paragraph, there's a paragraph down there in the bottom, last paragraph on the first, next to last paragraph on the first page is about cost. I talked to Billy Ray about that, and in the past, they don't pass along any cost to the requester. You have to be careful about that cost because you can't, if somebody comes in and wants it's really an inspection. I think in the past, most of the time, Billy Ray just copies it and sends it out, They can come in and inspect it. They may or may not want a copy of it, but I think in the past, they think you just make a copy and send it to them.
Since most of the records are digital anyway, it's kind of hard to inspect it, so
Right.
it's just easier to move.
So you can charge for those costs, but you can only charge the actual cost. It's not for the staff to copy. You can charge for a piece of paper and whatever I guess it costs for that copy machine to copy it for you. Which is probably not worth the trouble, I think, of the accounting system based on the number of pages that people get. So I anticipated the next to last paragraph probably being deleted, but I stuck it in there just so you know.
Well, and I
You
offered
can
it,
charge
Ronnie, to put, say, a payment fee of up to 10 cents a page, because that's what the law allows, but it also says if we don't feel like, if it's too much trouble to charge you for it, we'll just give it to you.
I actually requested some records just through my practice from the city and this week, and I didn't get a response back. I got their policy back with a application for that, and they I think they charged 10 cents. Their policy they sent me is basically like we saw in the Kentucky Administrative Regulations. It just contains, you got to designate an official custodian so that when, if records come into you, you don't got to respond. You're not, unless you're the official custodian. I put in some other things about, the statute contains a lot of things, and you can file responses and object to their request. I just put in some generic things on that last paragraph about just letting them know that, hey, if we object to it, or if there's an objection to it, you'll be given a reason for the objection cited to the specific statute, and the exceptions is quite lengthy, the number of exceptions, so I just reference the statute itself.
Ronnie's the 3-day requirement, is that something we're adopting, or is that part of the statute?
It's part of the statute.
Yeah, it's part of the statutes. If you've got an objection, you got to provide that, it's all in 3 days, or provide it or object to it.
So it's not like an FOA where.
No, that's
it seems-
federal.
Yeah, it see's like it's
A lot of people
unlimited amount of
get
time.
confused and try to file an FOIA on us. Well, we're not the federal government.
And there's some exceptions so that if it's a record that's in use and for some reason can't get it to them within the 3 days, you're supposed to provide reasonable notice and when it's gonna be available, and I've got some of that language in there too.
Okay.
So there's a lot of language that could be in there, but you can see only what's mandatory is those 4 things. So I've got some extra stuff in there, but it's not, it can be eliminated if necessary, but.
So the board doesn't have to act on a request that has to be delivered within 3 days. Only the custodian.
The official custodian is the responder to the request.
The board doesn't have to act.
Right.
Right, it's only
The law,
for,
basically, it said the board shall. It didn't say much about who the custodian was. It just said the basic open rules say that the board shall act within 3 days.
The agency's got to respond, but the agency responds to the official custodian. That's who the request is made.
the agency must respond through the official custodian. You guys are not the agency.
Right.
Only the Glasgow Electric Plant Board is the agency.
The agency-
And that's but that's the board. The board is the one that has to act. Do they have to act within 3 days?
Well, the board, that's what we're determining tonight is who is that official?
Not the board, I mean, whoever the official
Custodian.
No, I
custodian.
mean, the law says the board shall act within 3 days to respond.
The agency. The agency.
Is that what it says?
Yeah, but because it also defines what an agency is. You know, we're one, the water company's
Oh, I know
one,
that.
all that kind of stuff. But the board itself, individuals, you're not an agency. You're just you're just an individual.
But in order to respond, it would have to be authorized by the board, I would presume.
Well, you have,
How does the agency respond?
the agency is gonna designate an official
Okay,
custodian.
that can
Through the
respond
custodian.
and will respond within that period of
Right.
time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as I know, the
You know,
electric plant
that
board
came up-
has no designated official
That
custodian.
came up
Right, I mean-
with me earlier on, and I was saying, well, how am I going to get the board to do this? They're all over the country, and we can't possibly respond. So I just responded
No, the
per
board, I think
se.
the board needs to designate an official custodian,
Okay.
whether
I
that's
think
the
that's a good
superintendent or
Yeah.
whoever.
I think that's a proper way of doing
And
it.
then
Certainly
I've got in here, I suggested maybe putting it on the website and having a link to the application.
Yeah.
And my understanding is they may have had an application that, at some point, this application is
We've
very simple.
rediscovered it, yeah.
Yeah, it's very simple, the name, sign your name, print your name, tell us what records you want, and date it. That's all the application
Or
really
you
says.
can come in the lobby and,
When this
Yeah.
came up before, I responded as the chairman, and I still got sanctioned for not responding in time. I don't know how that happened.
Right, well, I mean, they didn't get into the question whether we had any policies and procedures in place.
The problem.
They could have talked
I
about
think the
that
problem-
too.
I think the problem occurs most of the time when a member of the board unilaterally takes an action without either the consent of the board or in the absence of a official custodian without the consent of the official custodian. I think if we don't do this, if we ever have these issues again,
It is-
it's probably gonna require the
it
entire
is-
board to decide
It
who
is the proper
releases the money.
procedure, but you can't stop a board member from responding.
No, you can only
But you can't
sanction them
speak-
afterwards.
you can't speak
If they
for
do
them.
it- if they do it the way that it's.
Once they
supposed
walk
to.
out that door, this board has no sanctioning power.
So I think what you need to adopt some regulation
That everybody
that contains
agrees
that
to.
information there and designate
Yeah.
an official custodian.
That's
So
the
that
way it
the
should.
request can come into that official custodian. I have in my proposal, you gotta give the hours of the business, the address, and then the official custodian can take it by hand delivery, fax, email. So I've got blanks in there because I don't know who it's coming to, but it's easy
yeah,
to fill out.
well, I filled in a lot
You
of
may have
those
filled some of
blanks.
it in.
I mean, all I would ask you to do is consider adopting this, in the form of a resolution, this document, except you need to fill in the blanks, who you want. I've been acting for years as the official custodian, but I've never been named that. So if you want me to be the official custodian, you need to fill in those blanks and then move to adopt this policy.
All this is doing is complying with the statute by having regulations and then posting them.
So do we
That's the
need
proper
to-
way of doing it. I think
So
we
we
should
need two
have a
separate
motion
motions,
that,
one to
I think
designate
you
you
just
as
say
we should
the,
have a motion that names the superintendent as the
As
Want to adopt
custodian
this
and
with-
adopt this as a procedure for
So I think.
Now, do we need to go ahead and, in the absence of the superintendent, something happens, you're out of town on vacation, you know, in the
We have
hospital?
an acting
then run over?
superintendent already in place, the CFO.
Okay, so that's what I'm wondering, if we need to go ahead and just designate that or just leave it alone.
I don't think the statute is silent on what if somebody's absent.
We have already
Like-
adopted the
like
fact that
Vicky
the
said, we leave
CFO
it,
is
right.
the
That's
acting
absolutely.
superintendent in your absence, so there's no problem there.
Okay.
Well, I make a motion that we name Billy as the
Custodian
custodian of record and that we adopt,
The superintendent is the custodian.
I mean, the superintendent as the
that way it
custodian. I guess
passes-
that should be better
it
than saying.
passes.
You don't have to do this
CFO.
if, yeah.
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion and a second. Do I have any other further discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor of the motion naming the superintendent as official custodian of record and adopting resolution regarding public records access rules and regulations, signify by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Okay, and then just for your information, this is what our form looks like. It's very similar to what Ronnie had. It's just, this is what we practically, this is what Sheila Hogue already had done that I wasn't aware of.
Can this be emailed in by PDF?
Yeah, we'll set it up that way, where you can download it from our website and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Mr. Chairman, are you ready to move along?
Moving on.
Okay, it's agenda item number 6 is some programming committee stuff. First of all, we finally did, or the co-op came to terms with Fox, for Fox News, Fox Sports 1, Fox Business, and Fox Sports 2. The terms are pretty okay. In 2020, the increased cost of the programming is going to amount to 60 cents, 58.9 cents. For 2020, 31 cents in 21, and 31 cents in 22, and 31 cents in 23. And of course, that'll just be incorporated into our next cable rate adjustment for programming. But it's not as monstrous as we feared it was going to be. And then Fox Sports 2 is only going to cost us a penny a year more, so I would call that a successful, it made for an interesting New Year's Eve.
It did.
It did, I smelled the kerosene.
But it got done. Everything seems to require drama in the business. But the programming committee asked that you all approve that, and it's before you to consider. And this other stuff's just informational, just in case you get comfortable and think that's over with. April the 30th, we've got the same kind of negotiations going on with Turner Networks, which has all those CNN, Headline, TBS, TNT, all that stuff. And then a couple of months later, September the 30th, we got the Scripps family of products, HGTV, Food Network, all that kind of that stuff. So busy year, and I think at the end of the year, we'll have to negotiate with the broadcasters again. So 2020 is going to be a fairly big program.
It's been nothing compared to the broadcaster increases. This is
They're usually the most
10
egregious.
times
Yeah.
more of what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So what I need for y'all to consider the Fox recommendation from the programming committee.
Motion to accept is.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? Any other discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor of accepting the recommendation of the program committee signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Okay, then, still on the programming committee, I'm gonna make y'all look at this again. We have these two people, Jody Crane and Petey McLean, whose terms expire Friday. So I've talked to them, if you all want to appoint them to another term, they will accept,
Yes.
although both of them have served 2 terms. Or you are completely free to name your own.
Has anybody else considered wanting to be on it?
Not that I heard from. Have y'all heard from anybody?
It's hard to get volunteers.
Volunteerism is kind of
That's not a term limit, are they? I mean, you can
a.
serve.
No, I mean, the board has set an unofficial limit that 2 terms is all they were gonna do, but
Yeah.
there's nothing that says you're gonna live by that.
It's hard to find volunteers to do
I think
stuff
that's
when you get attacked by
Yeah,
media.
and those are two
on a
great
weekly
committee
basis.
members. Let's
They do a
let's take,
great-
yeah, let's,
great job.
let's keep them and thank them profusely. That's my motion.
Yeah, they're gonna do it. They're willing to do it. Let's do it.
Right.
Is that
All right, so
second?
I got a second. I'll second.
Okay,
All those in favor of accepting Jody Crane and Peter McLean's extension for the program committee, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
okay, item 7 is sort of a housekeeping thing. You all will recall the last time we got the audit report, they continued to criticize Melanie for being the CFO and being able to sign checks. They wanted her off. So we're going to try to kick her off. And then Todd Barber is also one of the 5 check signers that we've got. We find 5, it's just, since it needs 2 and somebody's always gone, 5 is a good number. And Todd Barber has more than his number of years in and can walk in and retire at any moment. So we thought while we're at it, because you all wouldn't believe, it's easy, not that hard for you all to make a motion and approve this, but we deal with every bank in town and every one of them has different requirements for signatory approval. And this will be probably a 2-month process to get this done. So we're trying to do away with the red ones and have these 5 as the new authorized by the board signatories on our checking accounts.
I have to take your recommendation, so I'll move we accept the proposed authorized signers.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? All in favor of accepting as proposed, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Okay, I'll run through the reports quickly. We're going to do the financial review and talk about the February FCA and the CPD ledger, and we've already talked about the LSC issues, so unless y'all want to talk about that anymore, I won't. We've had.
I would like at the next meeting to talk about the LSC and why it wasn't as impactful on us as it could have been
Okay,
under different rate structures. I'd just like to get that out there for public consumption.
non-volumetric rates, but I'll talk about it all you want to.
Okay.
Okay, so, we wound up in December with a kind of an average or below average load factor because we had a couple of really cold days and the rest of the month was mild. But we were quite successful in picking the right day for the peak. We had 4 days that we called, and we hit the right day at the right hour. So it was December the 19th at 7 a.m., so we didn't have any excess payment to TVA over what we collected. And that happened rarely enough in December, in 2019, that we're really looking forward to doing better in 2020. We just had some bad luck with the weather. Predicting the future is a difficult thing to do. But we came out good in December. So for the final tally on our collections versus what TVA billed us in 2019, we wound up $43,000 in the red. That's compared to 2018 being about $18,000 in the black. So as far as rate design goes, that's probably an acceptable thing. If we have another year like that in 2020, we're going to have to increase the markup on a KW of peak demand to cover that. But right now, I think we're okay. Let's see, got my slides out of order here. The monthly fuel cost adjustment for February is going to be 1.637 cents, which is the lowest it's been in some number of years. As I put in the narrative, you know, TVA's had a lot of free energy through rain, and they've had a lot of really inexpensive natural gas, so had a very low fuel cost adjustment. So this is the tally on where we are on the people that have choices on rates for residential. You know, they can go with The variable rate, what we used to call the infotricity rate, there's still 38.16 on it. There's 1,800 on the flat rate. And on small commercial, there's 342 on the flat rate and 1,355 on the variable rate. That's virtually unchanged from last month. Hasn't been much movement on that lately. We're right at 900 people using the iPay prepay account, and so far iPay has helped us recover $130,000 in formerly written off bad debt. I haven't done this for a while. I thought it'd be interesting. This is not December, this is actually this month. This is a chart that shows all 6 of our rate classes, and this was for the 22nd of January, which we think is going to wind up being the peak day for January. And it shows you how each rate class contributed to the peak. So, you know, the one that gets talked about the most, this red one, this is the people that are on the variable rate, where that you use rate differentiation to get people to reshape the demand. You can see it worked quite nicely that day, so it does work. The gray line here is the residentials that have chosen the flat rate. And oddly enough, it seems to be, I mean, the only theory we can come up with that even the people on the flat rate look to be responding some to our peak predictions. Maybe just the media blasting that we do, maybe people forget which rate they're on and they respond anyway. I can't, that's just a wild guess. I don't know. The group of customers that are doing the worst at responding are actually the medium commercial customers. There's 204 of those, and again, those are the grocery stores, large retail boxes.
They can't respond.
Schools.
Right.
I mean,
Anybody can respond.
well, I mean, it's much.
But they're clearly not responding. And, you know, that's kind of, some of that problem is that it's bills paid to a corporate office, and the people that are paying the bill and the people that are actually local may not be talking to each other. I don't know. The purple line is large industry, and it's relatively flat. Doesn't look like they're doing anything in particular to get off a peak, but also they're not doing a lot to hurt themselves on peak either. And then this blue line is small commercial. That's whatever, law offices, you name it, anything under a 50 kW demand. And they could be doing more. But in January they didn't. So I just thought every so often you all would like to see that. So we've got 6 different rate classes, and each one of them responds in a different way to peak demand. I'd say that's it for me.
Well, I've got one thing that I'd like to bring up before we get out of here. Tonight is Jeff Harned's last meeting with us. So I just want to say, for the record, it's been a pleasure to serve with you. You are a man of character, integrity, well thought out propositions, and it has been, it's very rare to find all of those qualities in somebody that you work with on a board on a monthly basis. So I just want to say we appreciate your service. Thank you very much for your time as chairmanship. And I think what you've been on this board for 12 years.
12 years.
12 years, so you're going to be truly missed. And just want to say thank you very much for serving and being patient with us all while we've tried to catch up.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Could I expand on that some, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Didn't know you were going to do that, but I'm glad you did. Jeff has been just a highly unusual and pleasing board member in that he has just been aggressive at understanding the business that he and I have talked about, and he has been like a sponge, just soaking up information. And he also gave, you know, it was the first time I've had a medium commercial, one of the green line people, that I could have the kind of relationship with where I could really understand what this commodity that we're selling him does in his business and how he responds to it and how he could be more helpful. And so it has been a symbiotic relationship, both on the board, and he's been a great friend. It's not easy to be my friend because I'm only interested in about 4 or 5 things, and one of them is the power business and fly fishing and cars and classical music and classic rock music. So there's not that much I can really talk to. But Jeff hit on 3 of those, and so he entered my very limited solar system of planets that I had a relationship with, and now he becomes what I've seen way too much over the last few years, people exiting my orbit, and I really hate that, and don't want you to do that without you knowing how really special. I've been in this business for 45 years, and I've never worked with a more complete, thoughtful, educated board member than you. And I can't put into words how much I appreciate it.
Hear, hear.
Well, thank you. It has been an honor. I have worked with, I didn't know we were going to get into all this, but I have worked with some of the finest citizens in Glasgow on this board over the years. It's been an honor. This board, to you all, to any future board members, this board has never avoided risk-taking, ever in the history. It's always, if it can innovate, that's what this board has been all about. And I truly think that the way out of some of Glasgow's problems may be right here with the things that we can attract due to our smart grid and rate structures. And this may be our bright spot right here in this room. And last month I said to you, Billy, that, of all people come out of that silo and let's sell this to the world. And I really think that's what we're doing. So if I can leave you all and anybody else that'll serve on this board, anybody that might be listening that serves in the future, that's what it's all about.
Well, it's a better place than it was when you started, and that's all you can hope for. So,
well said.
You've done well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we
Thank you.
appreciate you
Yeah.
very much. And I highly, highly respect your wealth of knowledge, Chef.
We may call you.
You have been a wonderful asset to this board.
Sounds good. Okay.
I'm sure that's what he's thinking.
His wife is gonna unplug the phone. She's saying, your battery's dead, babe.
Well, on that note, I move we adjourn.
I second.
All right, we are adjourned.